This week in comic books, let's talk about Xenia because it gets brought up not only in DC but it's also shown in Marvel in the Hulk. So that was pretty interesting, and I want to talk about that. You may know this today as Southern Hospitality. Also, an independence between G.I. Joe and 11 Fingers and Cobra Commander. I'm just going to be honest, it's all aces. So let's just jump into this one. Let me sell you some coffee real quick, and we'll talk about this week's comic book. And if you're really good and pay attention, I'll probably give you my review of Madam Web. Hey, what's going on, folks? This is your boy Pocan Joe to talk to you about Coffee Brand Coffee. We serve people that are tired of gimmicky advertising and branded companies that want to lecture you. At Coffee Brand Coffee, all we want to do is serve you freshly roasted coffee wherever you're at, whenever you want it. Consider Coffee Brand Coffee. Check us out, check our reviews out, and use promo code POCANJOE or the link down in the description to save yourself some money. Give me the opportunity to get you a delicious cup of coffee. All right, weirdos, let's kick this off. We're going to start off with Justice League, Godzilla, and Kong. This is number 5. This is the cover I went with because, it is just beautiful. I really dig this artwork on here. It's really great. So what is the book about overall? So this is great. A lot's going on in this book. I'm going to explain that in a minute. But really what you get is the continuation of the story. We got the battle in Atlantis. Aquaman has actually imprisoned Godzilla underwater, which is kind of ironic, seeing that he has a Kraken to help him that was chained up down there too. You would think when something breaks free, it'd try to escape, but it makes sense if you don't overthink it. And of course, the Green Lantern Corps shows up to help Atlantis from crushing under the pressures of the ocean because they got an invisible barrier over it. Okay, that's fine. Cool the way they portrayed it all underwater, but as I explain it just sounds weird. We also deal with probably what I think the most interesting part of this story is Billy Batson, or Shazam, having to deal with the fact that he almost killed Superman and is kind of angry and wants to, like what most children would want to do, because he is a child, wants to punish somebody for that, not realizing that was really his fault. So he's going to go beat up the Legion of Doom, and this is not good because the Justice League kind of wants to use the Legion of Doom to help with all these huge monsters, kaijus everywhere right now, attacking it, and you need as many people as you can get. But Billy Batson's not hearing that, and he's going to go pick a fight. He does pick a fight. It does not end well. Just saying. Right? Also, we find out Lex Luthor is going to make himself a Godzilla mech. Yes, you may remember that from the movies. That's happening in here. Lex Luthor's going to do it. Who else to do it than Lex Luthor? We also find out little tidbits of information along the way, too, because a lot goes on in this comic book. We find out an organization by the name of Monarch had files on all these kaijus. We see Kong and Skull Island, and of course, when you have gorillas playing around, you know Gorilla Grodd's going to be there with his mental powers. His little gorilla action. It sounded horrible. I need to find better words. But all that happening in this one book. So what's the criticism here? This is good. Like, this is a good story. The problem, the thing that's holding this story back, in my opinion, is that it's a mini series. So you have to cram so much story into each issue that details can get lost very easy. I would have felt this would have been better if this was a DC event and a lot of these other stories were just kind of side stories that still main tracked into the same story. I thought that would have done better. But all in all, I'm really enjoying this. I just really wish it would kind of marinate out a little bit where you can actually read all this on its own. I think that's a fair criticism of it because man, you just end up missing so much going on in these stories. And it's only a few pages, right? And with beautiful artwork in it, too. Really, this should have been an event. That's how I feel about that. Okay, moving on to the next one. We got Hellblazer, Dead in America, number 2. Great cover on this one, too. I like this kind of creepy, weird cover thing going on. So what's going on here? We kind of get introduced to a very ancient Greek, I don't know, a social rule, right? Called Xena. This is basically back in ancient times, right? This was kind of like the rule of being hospitable and a good host when somebody came to visit you. Otherwise, the gods would, punish you, right? We kind of see that happen in New Orleans. In the Marvel story, it happens in New Orleans too, but we'll get to that in a second. We kind of get introduced to this, and we find this very old lady who lived back when this rule was created in the ancient times, right? And she's trying to help, or what we thought was to help John Constantine kind of resurrect Swamp Thing, right? This is all magical woo-woo story, so it's going to sound kind of weird when you explain it, right? So they go into the green using some, magic mushrooms, right? Get all woo, right? They go in there to try to get him to come out, right? The problem is that, like any other type of plant life or anything like that, he needs a place to grow, right? So it's going to take a little bit of time. And then we find out that our mystery lady from the Greek times is actually a villain. She's there for nefarious purposes. Now, I've always said John Constantine is a shit human being. And shit human beings tend to attract shit human beings. And they tend to screw you over, just like John Constantine screws people over. So yeah, so why bring back the Swamp Thing? Because there's a bigger threat that is also happening in the overall reaching of this story, and he needs Swamp Thing to kind of help him out, as his son is there. I like this aspect of the son not being able to speak but using sign language, but they don't like try to get us guessing what he's saying. They just tell us. It's great in that aspect of the story. And of course, his other little sidekick, a little feisty Scottish woman. She's all about the fight, which is accurate. I've known 2 Scottish women, and they are just as mean as the devil. But all in all, this is a great story, especially if you're into the more cryptic, witchcrafty, magic woo-woo side of DC and the Black Label, and it's adult themed as well. So a lot of great stuff going on in here too, but I really like this aspect of bringing up this particular type of thing, and then seeing it again, I felt remiss if I didn't share that with you. So moving on, we're going to jump right into where Xena gets mentioned again. Right? Incredible Hulk number 9. Again, the same concept here. We're in New Orleans. Bruce Banner's trying to find somebody to kind of help with the situation with the elders and all this other stuff with his little sidekick, little child girl with him. Kind of separates from her while he talks to the eldest in his Hulk form. And we kind of get like this kind of overreaching, you need to stop this. I'm the eldest of monsters. You really need to work with me. As she disguised herself as, of course, something that would entice Hulk or even Banner in that case, being, of course, Betty. So what is the Xena part of this? In the beginning of the story, you immediately see somebody who's kind of rude and just doesn't have a good heart, I think is a great way to put it. They see an old woman working outside, kind of sweeping up, and say some, disparaging things to the person. And then come to find out the person's not tolerating that. It's a monster. Right? It's a monster story. And then we find out how deep this monster story goes as Charlie, Bruce Banner's new little sidekick, tag-along friend, realizes that this person's chopping up bodies in the basement. Which is weird because they also tell you that there's a reason why there's no cellars in New Orleans, and it's because the water table being so high. I thought it was kind of cool how they brought up why the graves are on top of it, why there's no cellars, but so this would be the exception because it's horrifying and monstrous. It was great. So yeah, really interested in that. If you're still on board with Incredible Hulk all the way up to number 9 so far, let me know what you think about the series so far, because I've been enjoying it, but I've noticed a lot of other people are falling off of it, and I just don't know if it's just an interest thing or you don't like the story. I would really like to hear your opinions on that down below. All right, moving on. Probably the big find of the week. I was able to get to my comic book shop a little early for a change instead of late. And he sold me this 1 per store variant of Edge of the Spiderverse. This is probably the best cover out there. A lot of the other covers are going for stupid, crazy money. I don't know why we're spending that much money on these covers, but I got it at a good deal, so I can't hurt. So in this is a typical Spider-Verse story that comes in issue number 1 where you kind of get introduced to various versions of Spider-Man or Spider characters throughout the multiverse, ultimately ending in an overarching story of the new great threat coming, which is probably, I'm guessing, a version of the Sinister Six is the way they kind of left the cliffhanger there. In this one, you get introduced to a character by the name of 8. He's part of the Weapon X program. right? And he's hunting down Wolverine, and of course he's hunting down Captain America too. And then he's a lot more violent. But like anything that has been programmed, at some point you're going to question the programming. And in this one, 8, as he's constantly being called in it, wants to know what his name is. Eventually they have to tell him because he's okay with dying. He just doesn't want to know. That kind of soldier mentality, like death before dishonor type of, this is what I want and I'm willing to die for it. And it was a name. It was Peter. I thought that was great. The action in it's great. I like this more techie type of Spider-Man, right? Because even though he's deformed, like he's a mutated spider person, I guess is the best way to put it, they kind of outrig him with all this great tech. And it was really cool to see that. We see Spider Bite, which is an introduction to a more internet-based spider person that fights in the ethers, if you will. That story kind of missed me a little bit. It was kind of weird, but we're dealing with a student, if you will, who's kind of cheating on all their work so they can go fight crime in the internet. And then at the end, of course, we get Spider-Man 2099 having to put a team together to go fight this overarching story that's going to be coming out. And it was kind of weird that they didn't have a traditional Miles Morales or Peter Parker in there that we would see in the mainstream stories. They were kind of picking everybody else and poking fun, of course, at probably the most beloved Spider-Verse character there is, Spider-Ham. They just straight up said no to that one. It kind of broke my heart a little bit. It was one of the first comic books I ever read. But all in all, I don't know if I'm really down with a Spider-Verse story. I've always been kind of hit or miss for me. I read a couple of them, and then I'm just like, it's too much, and it leaves too much open, and I just generally end up missing it. So I don't know if I'm going to be picking up another copy of this. I got that one per store copy. So got that. I think I'm good. All right, moving on. We're getting into independence. I'm going to kick this off with Cobra Commander. I want to talk about covers for a second. First off, this cover right here is fire. And the variants that came out with it just seemed like lower effort covers from artists. Now, I'm not judging artwork, right? It just seemed like, one was obviously digitally done. And then you had this really cool effect in here with the Cobra coming out of it. And Cobra Commander coming out of the swamp, and you really the other ones were just kind of bland to me. I don't know. I'm not sure why they're even variants, to be honest with you. It seemed like that should have been the variant, but I digress. So what do we get in here? We're kind of getting flashbacks of how Cobra Commander leaving Cobra Law and then goes out into the world, and he's looking for Energon, right? Because this is a Transformers tie-in, I should say that. And his fascination with technology versus organic life, like the people at Cobra Law have. And in this, while he's running through the swamps of Florida, he runs into the Dreadnoughts, right? More importantly, Ripper and Buzzsaw, the guy with the chainsaw. Kind of runs into them, and they give us a very modern view of how sadistic these two Dreadnoughts are. And of course we see Zarana as well, and I'm assuming we're going to see of course the man himself in the next issue, Zartan. So all in all, this is good. I like where this is going, right? Because the fleshed out story of Cobra Law and Cobra Commander, from the movie, the animated movie, was never really fleshed out very well. Like, how did they meet? And it seems kind of generic just to hire mercenaries, right? It's better to have some sort of relationship there as Cobra builds Cobra, right? I like this. This is fun. It's engaging. And it's just cool to see, characters that you recognize and know, and still being able to update the story and still kind of, I don't want to say respect the heritage of it. I think that's a weird way to put that. I hear other people say that. It comes off weird. But it's a great way to take what is known and enhance it, right? With a more modern view to it. I think that is the winning formula here for this particular Cobra Commander and the Duke series books that have been coming out. Next, another home run for me, G.I. Joe. Look, I shouldn't have to say it. This is number 304. This is the 1/10 variant cover. I really like that Duke action on there. Talking about Zartan and everything else, right? So this is interesting. So we're continuing on with Serpentor, right? Teaming up with that 1990s, 2000s AI, right? Alpha 0001. They're teaming up. They're enhancing the other zombies that are on Cobra Island right now that are all Cobra. They're enhancing them, and they're kind of sending out little sneak attacks everywhere, little peek and pokes, if you will, right? Both in G.I. Joe and in Springfield. Why Springfield? That's where Cobra Commander is, and he's not very happy right now. He's raising up his armies in defense. G.I. Joe's taking a more passive watch, let's see what they do type of scenario in here, which is fantastic, by the way. And the fact that Spirit's involved in that. The Native American guys in charge of like security and the camera systems. But we also get introduced to the Snake Eyes from the Devil's Due publishing, the female one. We get introduced to her in here. So she's part of the story. And she sees the enhanced zombies, Cobra guys from Cobra Island, kind of spying, engages them into a little bit of a battle, and we kind of see her action in there. So if you're only familiar with the 80s G.I. Joes, you're getting a great mixture of both that 80s era and that Devil's Due run. You're kind of getting a mixture of all that in here. I missed out on a lot of that stuff, so I had to kind of back up and like, why? Come find out she's like a clone part of them, blah, blah, blah. Right? The G.I. Joes do end up capturing some of the enhanced zombie tech Cobra Island characters. I really need to come up with a better name for those guys. Hopefully you're still tracking on this. But come to find out, they're robotically enhanced. So they came alive, and we got to see Wild Bill, the famous helicopter pilot, kind of take care of business a little bit in it. It was great to see that character doing something. I was super happy to see that. And we also get a little bit of, well, I'll just go ahead and tell you. So Destro is now going to be entering this. We have 3 fractions, right? We have Cobra Commander in Springfield. We've got the G.I. Joes. And we got Serpentor, of course, teaming up with the AI. And now we got Destro, and he's teaming up with Zartan, the Master of Disguise. And that means his Dreadnoughts, too. And they're kind of becoming this other fraction out there now. Do they team up with Cobra Commander and kind of enhance that, really giving the G.I. Joe the threat of 2 fronts? Or are they just going to be a separate entity in there? I'm guessing it's wherever the money goes. And if you know your G.I. Joe history, it's always about where the money is. Who can pay the most, right? And who can benefit the most from the payment as well. So, yeah, super excited. Great series. All right. Next, we got The Six Fingers. This is a suspenseful horror drama, right? It starts off like every other comic book, but it gets dark very quickly as we find out that a young man who is an archaeologist student trying to apply for tenure and funding to go look for a mysterious, or the origins of a mysterious artifact that his father found at one point. This kind of takes place in the future a little bit. He works at a place with, I'm guessing they make batteries or something. It was kind of weird. It didn't really make sense. But he's like the big brain there. He's really good at his job. You should know that. And he kind of takes a hands-on approach to things when usually there's a lot of bureaucracy involved in taking care of this. I am pointing at you, EPA and OSHA. You do not need to exist. So moving on from that, so now something is making him mimic a serial killer from the past, and he's chopping up bodies, and he's kind of going into these trances when he does it. Does it have something to do with this ancient artifact that nobody can explain? What's going on in it? And that's what this comic book does. It keeps you guessing throughout the entire thing, and is very suspenseful. I really, really enjoyed that. So that's my comic book haul and review this week. I want to go ahead and throw out my first thoughts on Madam Web real quick. It's a horrible movie. The story, and I only speak from the story sense. Although there were some cinematography that didn't make sense. Like they loved to kind of loop the screen a whole lot. If the actions were up and down for some reason, they would just spin the entire. It was just weird. It was horribly done. The story did not make much sense. You find yourself saying, so what, a lot of the time. But I am not going to take this from the approach of don't give them your money, these people don't like you. I'm not going to take that approach. What I'm actually going to recommend everybody do out there is go watch the movie. Go watch the movie. And then immediately put your first thoughts in a tweet on social media or something like that. And the reason why I say this is apparently the creator, the director, screenplayer, which all weirdly is the same person, has come out and started calling everybody toxic fandom and misogynistic and everything else out there. And honestly, as a comic book nerd, I'm getting kind of tired of being insulted by people that are not comic book nerds and do not understand the properties that they're being given, and delivering something that's actually making sense and entertaining to watch. So what I'm going to recommend is everybody go watch it. Go watch it and tell me that story makes sense to you. Maybe I'm not that bright. Maybe I'm missing something. But I'm going to tell you right now, that thing was just trash. Dakota Johnson's acting, flat. The connection between her and the girls was not explained very well. I don't understand the spider people in the Peruvian jungle. I'm also tired of fake nerds being in every single movie out there. People like Will Wheaton and Pat Osborne and Adam, whatever his name is, that was in this movie. These kind of, we're going to put these guys in because nerds, this is how they act. And this is, what, screw you. No, they do not act. No, they're just Benedict nerds as far as I'm concerned. And I'm tired of seeing them in every single movie. Like, they're supposed to be the staple of what we're like. No, thank you at all. Yeah. Also, I don't know, whoever the sound person was needs to be fired, because legitimately there's points where somebody's talking and the sound and the lips are not sunk up. The VX, the special effects team, you need to be fired too. All three companies that worked on the visual effects for this movie, horrible. A Roman candle cannot blow a hole in a brick wall. I am sorry. And I don't expect big brain nerd, super realistic stuff all the time. But that fireworks factory blowing up, the amount of damage that it did, come on, man. At that point, I just think you think we're stupid, right? Also, to sit there and tell us that, okay, she gets the Madam Web gets the, what is it? She's able to see the future and all the premonitions and all this other stuff, but she didn't get the strength and speed that the bad guy got. And then having her do a Captain America moment with a shield, part of the building, to block off these fireworks that are hitting them. The fireworks that blew the hole in the brick wall. I'm just going to pause on that and let that sink in. That happened in this movie. Not to mention the same fireworks that took down a helicopter. She was able to hold up a piece of corrugated steel and block it off. I was like, God, you're just not being accurate at this point, or you really don't care. So I'm not going to do the thing where I'm going to yell at people to not go see it. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to encourage. I'm going to do the one thing they really don't want to happen. I'm going to encourage you to go see that movie. Go watch it. Tell me that bad guy was like in any way threatening. Like there was nothing. He just didn't scare you. You didn't get a sense of intensity from anybody in the movie whatsoever. Tell me I'm wrong. Comment down below to be like, dude, you were just wrong. This is why the movie's good. Tell me. I'm just curious. It's time to stop telling people to watching things, because then you're just toxic and you're a horrible person. Fine. Go watch the movie. And then put out there in the ether what you like and didn't like about it. And I dare them. to attack everybody. Ugh. Horrible. Also, I want to do a big shout out to the guys over at In Between the Lines over at TM Nerdy's channel. They had me on and we designed weapons. I actually designed a better Craven weapon. Bam! Right? I thought that would be a better Craven knife than what he's usually seen with. I drew that, and then a bunch of other people drew things and kind of shared it. It's all on there. It is about 3 hours long. It's more than just an interview, but we had a great time on there. And then looking at other people's artwork out there, there are some talented people out there that did some really cool stuff. And I want to thank everybody for that as well. So, guys, that's my long rant. I think I'm done. Where am I at? 23 minutes? We're done. All right, guys. I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.